My precious child, stop for a moment. Do not rush past this message. Do not allow your mind to wander to the responsibilities waiting for you or the worries that have been following you all day. Everything else can wait. What I am about to tell you is too important to miss. There is a reason these words are reaching you right now. There is a reason you felt drawn to this moment. And there is a reason your spirit has been restless. Last night, when the world around you grew quiet, something happened that you did not fully understand. You thought you were alone. You thought nobody could hear you. You thought your tears disappeared into the darkness. But they did not. My child, what you cried about last night reached heaven. Every tear. Every sigh. Every broken sentence. Every prayer that never found the right words. Every question hidden deep within your heart. I heard it all. Not part of it. Not some of it. All of it. I know exactly what happened when you finally stopped pretending you were okay. I know what happened when you could no longer carry the weight in silence. I know what happened when the emotions you had been holding back finally began to surface. You tried to stay strong. You tried to convince yourself that everything would work out. You tried to keep moving forward despite the disappointment, despite the confusion, despite the uncertainty. But last night was different. Last night something inside you reached its limit. And that is why I am speaking to you now. Because the tears you thought were a sign of weakness became a prayer that reached my throne. Listen carefully. Many people think I only hear polished prayers. They think I only respond to perfect words. They believe they must know exactly what to say before approaching me. But my child, some of the most powerful prayers are the ones spoken through tears. Some of the deepest cries of the heart are the ones that never become complete sentences. Some of the prayers that move heaven the most are simply moments of surrender. And last night, whether you realized it or not, your heart spoke to me. I know what has been weighing on you. I know the burden you have carried. I know the disappointment you keep replaying in your mind. I know the answer you have been waiting for. I know the door you hoped would open. I know the relationship that hurt you. I know the opportunity that slipped away. I know the fear you rarely admit to anyone else. Nothing about your struggle is hidden from me. There were moments when you wondered if I had forgotten about you. Moments when you questioned whether your prayers were making any difference. Moments when you looked around and saw other people moving forward while you remained in the same place. You tried not to compare. You tried not to become discouraged. But some nights the questions became louder than your faith. Some nights the waiting felt heavier than your hope. And last night was one of those nights. That is why I need you to hear me clearly. I have not forgotten you. Not for a single moment. Not during your waiting. Not during your confusion. Not during your disappointment. Not during your tears. I have been with you through all of it. Even when you could not feel my presence. Even when you could not understand my silence. Even when the answers seemed far away. I was there. I am still here. And I am not finished with your story. Stay with me because what I am about to reveal may change the way you see your situation. The tears you cried last night were not only an expression of pain. They were evidence of how deeply you still care. They were evidence that hope still exists within you. They were evidence that despite everything you have endured, your heart has not completely given up. The enemy wanted those tears to convince you that you were defeated. But I want you to understand something different. Those tears reached heaven because your battle matters. Your future matters. Your purpose matters. You matter. The enemy has been trying to exhaust you. Not because you are weak, but because he recognizes the strength that is growing within you. He has been trying to convince you that nothing is changing. That your prayers are accomplishing nothing. That your waiting has no purpose. That your breakthrough is still far away. But he is afraid of something. He is afraid that you will realize what I have been doing behind the scenes. He is afraid that you will understand how close certain answers have become. He is afraid that your faith will rise again. Because once faith rises, fear begins to lose its grip. And my child, your faith is beginning to rise again. You may not fully see it yet. You may still feel tired. You may still carry unanswered questions. But something is shifting. The fact that you are hearing these words is not an accident. The fact that this message found you is not random. I arranged this moment because I need you to understand a secret. Last night's tears were not ignored. They became a turning point. You thought heaven was silent. But heaven was listening. You thought nobody understood. But I understood. You thought your cry disappeared into the darkness. But it reached my throne. And because it reached heaven, movement has already begun. You cannot see all of it yet. You cannot understand all of it yet. But movement has begun. The answer may not have arrived. The circumstances may not have changed. The evidence may not yet be visible. But something is happening. Something that started before you woke up today. Something that connects directly to the tears you shed last night. And in the next part, I am going to reveal what happened in the spiritual realm when your cry reached heaven, why your tears carried more power than you realize, and why the enemy is desperately hoping you stop believing right now. Declare, God heard me, if this message is speaking to your spirit. And stay with me, my child, because this conversation has only just begun. My precious child, stay with me, because I promised that I would reveal what happened when your cry reached heaven. Do not let your attention drift now. This is the very thing the enemy hoped you would never understand. Last night, when your tears fell and your heart poured out everything it had been carrying, you thought you were experiencing a moment of weakness. But heaven saw something completely different. Heaven saw honesty. Heaven saw faith that refused to die. Heaven saw a child who was still reaching for me despite exhaustion. You see, my child, there is a difference between giving up and crying out. The enemy wants you to confuse the two. He wants you to believe that your tears mean you are losing. He wants you to think that because you felt broken, you must be defeated. But that is not true. Some of the strongest moments of faith happen when a person cries and continues trusting anyway. Some of the most powerful prayers are spoken by people who feel weak but refuse to walk away. And last night, when your heart spoke to me, something happened that you could not see. A record was made in heaven. Your pain was noticed. Your prayer was heard. Your struggle was acknowledged. Nothing was overlooked. Nothing was ignored. Nothing was forgotten. I know there were moments when you wondered if your situation mattered to me. You looked at the size of your problem and questioned whether heaven was paying attention. You looked at your circumstances and wondered if your voice could even reach beyond the walls around you. But my child, before your tears touched the ground, I already knew they were coming. Before you spoke a single word, I understood what was in your heart. Before you asked for help, I was already working. That is why I need you to stop measuring my presence by your feelings. There were days when you felt strong. I was there. There were days when you felt hopeless. I was there. There were days when faith came easily. I was there. There were days when believing felt difficult. I was still there. My presence has never depended on your emotions. My love has never depended on your strength. My faithfulness has never depended on your ability to understand what I am doing. I remain faithful because that is who I am. Now listen carefully. The reason your tears carried so much power is because they came from a place of sincerity. You were no longer pretending. You were no longer hiding. You were no longer trying to appear stronger than you felt. For a brief moment, everything became real. And when the heart becomes honest before me, transformation begins. The enemy fears honesty. He fears surrender. He fears the moment when a person stops relying entirely on themselves and starts trusting me again. Because that is often the moment when chains begin to break. That is often the moment when healing begins. That is often the moment when change starts moving toward a person's life. My child, there is something I need you to understand. You have been focusing on what you lost. I have been focusing on what remains. You have been looking at closed doors. I have been looking at open possibilities. You have been measuring your future by past disappointments. I have been preparing a future that is larger than your disappointments. This is why the enemy keeps bringing old memories back into your mind. Have you noticed it? Old failures. Old mistakes. Old regrets. Old wounds. They appear at unexpected times. Sometimes when you are trying to move forward. Sometimes when you are trying to pray. Sometimes when you are trying to believe. The enemy wants your attention fixed on yesterday because he is afraid of what happens when you start looking toward tomorrow. He knows that hope creates momentum. He knows that faith creates movement. He knows that expectation changes the way people live. And right now, my child, expectation is beginning to return to your spirit. Slowly. Quietly. But surely. The tears from last night did not push you further away from your breakthrough. They brought you closer. Because they marked a moment of release. For too long, you have been carrying burdens that were never meant to rest entirely upon your shoulders. You have been trying to solve everything. Understand everything. Control everything. And the weight has exhausted you. Last night, part of that weight was released. Part of it was placed into my hands. And now I am asking you not to pick it back up. Trust me with it. Trust me with the unanswered questions. Trust me with the uncertainty. Trust me with the future. Trust me with the timing. I know the path ahead. I know where every step leads. I know which doors should open. I know which doors should remain closed. I know which opportunities belong to you. I know which distractions need to stay behind. You do not have to carry the responsibility of knowing everything. You only need to trust the one who does. My child, there is another reason I brought you here today. Because the tears you cried last night were connected to something much deeper than a single situation. They revealed a hunger inside your spirit. A desire for clarity. A desire for peace. A desire to know that your life is moving in the right direction. And I want you to know that your desire has not gone unnoticed. In fact, it is connected to something I have been preparing for longer than you realize. The very thing you thought was breaking you has been preparing you. The very thing you thought was delaying you has been positioning you. The very thing you thought was hurting your future has been shaping it. You cannot see the full picture yet. But soon, pieces that once seemed disconnected will begin fitting together. Soon, things that made no sense will begin making sense. Soon, answers will begin appearing where confusion once existed. But before that happens, there is one more truth I need you to understand. Because what happened after your cry reached heaven is even more significant than the cry itself. Something has been shifting behind the scenes. Something has been moving into position. Something that directly affects the prayer you have carried for so long. And in the next part, I will reveal why certain delays were necessary, what heaven has been preparing during your waiting season, and why your answer may be much closer than it appears. Declare, my tears were not wasted, if this message is speaking to your spirit. Stay with me, my child. The deeper revelation is still ahead. My precious child, stay with me. In the last part, I told you that something has been shifting behind the scenes since your cry reached heaven. I told you that your tears were not wasted. I told you that movement had already begun. Now I want to reveal why certain delays were necessary and what has truly been happening during this season that felt so confusing. You have often asked me the same question in different ways. Why has it taken so long? Why am I still waiting? Why hasn't the answer arrived? Why does it seem like everyone else is moving forward while I remain in the same place? I know those questions. I know the frustration behind them. I know the weariness behind them. And today, I want to answer them. The delay was never because I was ignoring you. The delay was never because I forgot you. The delay was never because your prayer lacked value. The delay existed because there were things being prepared that you could not yet see. My child, there are blessings that arrive quickly, and there are blessings that require preparation. There are answers that can be delivered immediately, and there are answers that must be built piece by piece. The greater the assignment, the greater the preparation often required. Think about the strongest trees in a forest. They do not grow overnight. Their roots must grow deep before their branches can reach high. If the roots remain shallow, the first storm can destroy what appeared beautiful from the outside. This is why I have been working beneath the surface of your life. While you were asking for visible change, I was strengthening invisible foundations. While you were praying for the door to open, I was preparing you for what stood behind the door. While you were asking for the blessing, I was shaping the person who would receive it. And that shaping was not always comfortable. There were seasons when I allowed you to face challenges that stretched your faith. Not because I wanted to hurt you. Not because I wanted you to suffer. But because I was developing strength within you that could not be developed any other way. You wanted immediate answers. I wanted lasting growth. You wanted quick relief. I wanted deep transformation. You wanted the destination. I was preparing you for the journey. Stay with me because this truth is important. Many people pray for blessings they are not yet prepared to carry. They ask for opportunities without developing wisdom. They ask for increase without developing discipline. They ask for influence without developing character. But I love you too much to give you something that would ultimately harm you. That is why preparation matters. That is why timing matters. That is why the waiting season was necessary. The enemy wanted you to interpret the waiting as punishment. He wanted you to become bitter. He wanted you to become impatient. He wanted you to stop trusting me. Because he knew that if you remained faithful through the process, you would emerge stronger than before. And that is exactly what has happened. You may not fully recognize it yet, but you are not the same person who entered this season. Your perspective has changed. Your faith has matured. Your understanding has grown. Your dependence on me has deepened. The person listening to these words today is stronger than the person who first began this journey. That growth matters. Because what is coming next will require it. Now let me reveal something else. There were moments when you believed nothing was happening. But heaven has never been inactive. While you were waiting, conversations were taking place that you knew nothing about. While you were praying, circumstances were shifting. While you were questioning, opportunities were being positioned. While you were feeling forgotten, doors were quietly moving into alignment. You could not see it because much of the work was happening outside your field of vision. My child, one of the greatest mistakes people make is assuming that visible silence means invisible inactivity. But some of my greatest works happen where human eyes cannot see. The seed grows underground before it appears above the surface. The foundation is built before the house is visible. Preparation happens before manifestation. And that is what has been occurring in your life. The enemy fought hard to keep you focused on what was missing because he knew that if you saw everything I was arranging, fear would lose its influence over you. You would stop worrying. You would stop doubting. You would stop questioning whether I was working. You would realize that the answer was moving toward you all along. And my child, it is. Closer than you think. Closer than it appears. Closer than your circumstances suggest. I know there were nights when disappointment convinced you otherwise. I know there were days when fear tried to speak louder than faith. But neither disappointment nor fear has the authority to determine your future. I do. And my plans for you remain intact. Not weakened. Not delayed beyond recovery. Not forgotten. Intact. There is something else I need you to hear. The tears you cried that night did more than express pain. They marked the end of one season and the beginning of another. You did not recognize it at the time. You thought it was simply another difficult night. But heaven recognized it as a turning point. A moment of release. A moment of surrender. A moment when you finally stopped trying to carry everything alone. And when that happened, space was created for something new. Space for peace. Space for healing. Space for renewed hope. Space for the next chapter one I'm writing in your life. My child, the season ahead will not look exactly like the season behind you. The lessons will remain. The wisdom will remain. The growth will remain. But the burden was never meant to remain forever. The waiting season was preparation, not permanence. The struggle was a chapter, not the entire story. The delay was a season, not your identity. You are moving forward. Even if the progress has been invisible. Even if the evidence has been limited. Even if the answers have not yet fully appeared. You are moving forward. And there is one final truth that I have been preparing to reveal. Declare, I trust God's process, if this message is speaking to your spirit. Stay with me, my child. The revelation is becoming clearer, and the most powerful truths are still ahead. My precious child, stay with me. In the last part, I told you that the tears you cried marked the end of one season and the beginning of another. I told you that what felt like just another painful night was actually a turning point in heaven's eyes. Now I want to reveal why this moment is more significant than you realize and why the enemy has fought so hard to keep you discouraged. The enemy is not afraid of who you used to be. He is afraid of who you are becoming. Think about that for a moment. If your future held nothing of value, there would be no reason for such resistance. If your prayers carried no power, there would be no reason for such opposition. If your purpose was insignificant, there would be no reason for such persistent attacks against your peace, your confidence, and your faith. But the resistance has been real because the purpose is real. The pressure has been real because the calling is real. The battle has been real because what lies ahead is real. The enemy has watched you survive situations that should have broken you. He has watched you stand back up after disappointments that should have convinced you to quit. He has watched you continue praying even when answers seemed distant. And what frightens him most is that despite everything you have endured, you are still here. You are still believing. You are still hoping. You are still listening for my voice. And that is exactly why he has tried so hard to convince you that your tears meant failure. But your tears were never evidence of failure. They were evidence of endurance. Because only someone who still cares cries out for change. Only someone who still believes cries out for answers. Only someone who still has hope reaches toward heaven in the middle of the night. My child, there is something powerful happening inside you that you may not fully recognize yet. Your perspective is changing. Months ago, certain fears controlled your thoughts. Certain worries dominated your attention. Certain disappointments felt larger than your faith. But little by little, I have been teaching you to see differently. Not perfectly. Not all at once. But gradually. You are beginning to understand that your circumstances do not have the final word. You are beginning to understand that delays do not cancel promises. You are beginning to understand that setbacks do not determine destinies. And that understanding is dangerous to the enemy. Because once a person truly believes that I am working even when they cannot see it, fear begins to lose its authority. That is why the enemy keeps trying to draw your attention backward. Backward to old mistakes. Backward to old disappointments. Backward to old wounds. Backward to old regrets. He wants you trapped in memories because he knows your future contains things he cannot stop. But I am calling you forward. Forward into healing. Forward into peace. Forward into confidence. Forward into the next chapter one have prepared. Stay with me because this next truth is important. The blessing approaching your life is connected to everything you have endured. Nothing was random. Nothing was wasted. Nothing was meaningless. Every lesson taught you something. Every challenge strengthened something. Every delay developed something. Every disappointment revealed something. You may not have understood the purpose while you were living through it, but purpose was present all along. The patience you learned will help you in the next season. The wisdom you gained will help you in the next season. The discernment you developed will help you in the next season. Even the pain has prepared you in ways you cannot yet fully appreciate. Many people want the blessing without the preparation. Many people want the harvest without the growth. Many people want the reward without the process. But my child, the process has positioned you for what is coming. That is why I need you to stop viewing your past only through the lens of loss. Look again. There was growth. There was wisdom. There was strength. There was preparation. There was my hand guiding you even when you could not see it. And now that preparation is beginning to reveal its purpose. The reason this message reached you at this exact moment is because I want your heart ready. Ready to trust. Ready to receive. Ready to move forward. Ready to let go of the belief that your best days are behind you. Because they are not. The enemy has whispered that you missed your opportunity. But you did not. He has whispered that it is too late. But it is not. He has whispered that what you lost can never be restored. But he does not have authority over your future. I do. And I am telling you now that the story is not over. The chapter is not finished. The promise remains alive. There are things moving into position that you cannot yet see. There are answers drawing closer than you realize. There are doors being aligned according to my timing. You may not know the exact day. You may not know the exact path. But you can know this. I am faithful. I have always been faithful. And I will remain faithful. My child, one of the greatest mistakes people make is assuming that because they cannot see immediate evidence, nothing is happening. But faith often grows in the space between the promise and the fulfillment. That space is where trust develops. That space is where strength develops. That space is where character develops. And that space is where you have been living. But the season is shifting. Not because of luck. Not because of chance. But because preparation has been taking place for longer than you realize. And there is still one final revelation I need to share with you. Because the deepest meaning behind the tears you cried that night has not yet been fully revealed. In the next part, I will reveal the final secret, explain why heaven allowed you to go through this season, and show you how to position your heart to receive what has been prepared for you. Declare, my future is in God's hands, if this message is speaking to your spirit. Stay with me, my child. The final revelation is almost here.